Yo, what's going on guys? I'm Mike from MOBOX, and in this video, which is sponsored by Skillshare, linked down in the description, we're going to be going through how to create this sort of odd text effect where the text sort of evolves into position. And we're going to be doing all in After Effects. And if you want to download the project file, you can over on our Patreon account. If you don't want to go through the hassle of subscribing to Patreon, you can just grab this specific file over on our Gumroad account as well. So anyways, jumping into After Effects here, let's start by creating a composition, new composition. And I'm going to make it 1000 by 1000. And I'm going to make it like, I don't know, 5 seconds, 30 frames per second. That's fine. Hit OK. And I'm going to start by creating a layer, new solid. And I'm going to actually change the dimensions of this. And I want it to be height-wise, I want it to be about 1/10. So I could just divide this by 10. And for the width, I'm going to divide this by 2. So it just gives me sort of this shape here. And I'm going to add a couple effects to this. The first one is going to be a gradient ramp. Drag that on. And I'm going to move the positions of the ramp colors until they are sort of just in the center there. So that should be 500, 0, 50. And I'm actually also going to just hit this swap colors button. So that way we get white and then black. And I'm going to add reptile to this so I can get some additional horizontal lines. And I'm just going to expand to the right a bit and then expand to the left. I could always expand it more later if I want to. And now I just want to change the position and I want to put this all the way at the top, which should be 500 and then 50. And I think the length of this composition is screwed up. So I'm just going to go into my composition settings and change this to 5 seconds instead of 5 frames. Let's expand this out. Okay, so next thing, I want to change the position. Hit P on the keyboard. And I'm going to go to like, I don't know, 3 seconds or 4 seconds and set a keyframe and then come back to 0 and then move it over so it's at position 0. And we'll see how fast that moves. And that moves perfect. And I'm just going to hold Alt on the key and then press the keyframe and type in loop out, continue. And so this will just loop out forever. I'm going to name this master and I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it and name this slave. And I'm going to hit P on the keyboard now and holding Alt, pressing on the stopwatch twice to get my expression. And I'm going to delete those keyframes. And I'm going to type an expression in here. This comp layer index -1 dot position dot value at time parentheses time -1. And then I'm going to add brackets 0, 100. And now let me explain what this did. So what I told it to do was I said, I want you to look at the position of the layer that's on this index. So this index -1. So that's the layer above it. Value at time, but I'm going to delay that time by 1 second. So you can see here that at 1 second, the next one starts moving. Okay. And then I added 0 for the X. So I don't want it to change in the X, but I do want to move it down in the Y. And I did +100 here on the Y because if you remember, this composition is 1000 by 1000. And we made this shape 1/10 of that. So 1000 divided by 10 is 100. So now if I just duplicate this slave, you can see here that it fills up our composition. The downside to this though is now we have to wait like a bunch of seconds, like 10 seconds for this to loop. So I'm just going to drag all of these layers and move them over until it starts looping or until all of the layers have moved. So now if I hit play, this should loop out perfectly. And it does not. It does not. The reason being is that this actually should end it at 4 seconds because of our keyframe was at 4, not 5 seconds. So now let's see. Okay, now it loops perfectly. So I could just right click and trim comp to work area. And now this should loop seamlessly forever. Before we move on to the next part, I just want to tell you a little bit about Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of courses on pretty much everything from productivity to filmmaking. In my opinion, I really do believe that this is the future of learning. It's an amazing way to find highly qualified and high quality teachers and lessons to get started on learning something new. Definitely useful if I want to continue learning and expanding my filmmaking skills, which is on my list to do in 2021. I've also been enjoying this course by Stephen Pearson. It guides you through creating and designing a modern house in Blender 2.8. I love how it's broken up into small bite-sized chunks so I could learn at my own speed and fit a lesson in when I have some downtime. I think the reason that I like Skillshare is that it feels a little bit more curated, more worth my time. Also, it's very affordable compared to other avenues of learning, especially higher education. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month, which is totally crazy if you know how much college tuition typically is. So with that said, I've teamed up with them to offer a free trial of premium membership to the first 1,000 of you guys that click the link down in the description. This is the future of learning, and I'm so happy to be able to help you get started on this journey. Okay, great. Now I could just go ahead and I guess pre-comp all of these. I'm just going to name this displacement, hit OK. And I'm now going to just make that layer invisible for a second. I guess, you know what, this should make it easier. I'm going to create a new composition also, and I'm going to name this text layer. And I'm just going to put any text or any objects I want on this layer, because that way we can change what's in the composition without applying the effects directly onto the text layer. So I'm just going to type in here evolve. You notice that this text is just the outlines, and the way you do that is your text probably looks something like this. If you just select it and hit this little swap, fill, and stroke, and then you can come down here and increase the stroke size. That's how you just get stroked text. And now I'm going to go into my comp one and drag in my text layer in here. And I'm going to put it under the displacement and make the displacement one invisible. And under the track matte on the text layer, I'm going to set it to Luma matte. And so you could see that it sort of, makes it fade in and out, which is kind of cool. And on the displacement, I'm going to add an effect called Mosaic. I'm just going to drag it onto the displacement, and I guess I could make it visible just so you could see what it does. Basically, it like pixelates things. So for horizontal, I could set it to like 50, and then for vertical, I can maybe set it to like 1080. Actually, at 10, it literally looks exactly the same. Okay, so that's perfect. So 56 worked for me. I'm just going to make that layer invisible again. And now on the text layer, I'm just going to add a couple effects, a handful of effects. The first one is going to be displacement. Displacement map. I'm just going to drag that onto the text and select displacement as my source. And I'm going to use effects and mask. I'm going to change both of these to lightness and set this to something like 1010 or maybe even 2020. And I'm also going to add an effect called echo and set these values to something like negative 0.3. My number of echoes maybe like 3. And then my decay I'm going to set to like 0.5. Let's start there, sort of inch up. Let's change this to maybe something like 10 and 10. 20 is kind of crazy. And by the way, like your echo and your delay, it's probably going to be correlated a lot to some of the other effects you use. So if you do modify the effects here, you're going to have to come in and change the echo delay. I actually wanted that to be 0.03. And maybe even smaller, 0.025. Looks pretty cool. And then change my decay a bit. So I think that looks pretty cool so far. We can continue to make it look even cooler. Again, you can adjust your horizontal blocks, and that will also change the look of it as well. Okay, so this is going to start slowing down our computer a bit. I'm going to now add a gradient ramp onto this, and let's see if I can find these buttons. I'm just going to change the color to something like green and white. I think that looks pretty cool. And I'm going to add a glow effect. And I think this text might be a little too large, so I'm just going to scale it down just a bit. Okay, so that looks pretty cool the way it is, but we could kind of take things a little bit further. And on that object, so this is kind of one look that you can get, but on that displacement object, we can add a fast blur to it, and it will give us a completely different look. We will again have to change our echo. So it sort of smooths out the displacement a bit, which looks pretty cool. But now it looks a little blurry. So I'm going to come into my echo and change my echo settings to match. So I think that looks pretty cool. Now we just need to add a couple, maybe a couple adjustment layers, maybe a background, and I think we can wrap this up. So I'm just going to create a layer new solid and make it like nearly black. Put it on the bottom, layer new adjustment layer that I'll apply some effects to, and kind of my go-to are like, you know, blurs and glows and noise. So I'm going to add a channel blur and just change maybe the green value by a tad. Ooh, okay, this adjustment layer is like, oh, you know what it is? This dark solid layer is way too small. So layer new solid. I need to remember to change this to the aspect ratio, make comp size. So changes it back to 1000 by 1000. Put it on the bottom. And now I could add a little bit of channel blur to maybe to the green, maybe like 3. Oh, that's even a lot. Maybe 2. Wow, maybe 1. I don't know. Just add a little bit more blur to the green. Add a maybe another glow effect to this. And then add a noise. Alternatively, you could use grain if that's what you want to use. But I think noise looks good. And now, to get this to change, all you got to do is come into this text layer and you can put anything. Obviously, that doesn't fit, but you can put your name in there and change the colors here. For the project file that we'll put on Patreon and Gumroad, I'll make this 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second, and then that way you can change the text and stuff, or put what you could put anything you want under there. Yeah. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to send this video a like. Send this video a like. I don't even know what that means. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. First it with the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the bag like here I go again. Outside says chirp, now the camera phone. Told you I'ma keep the channels on. Why you acting different when the camera's on? Why you acting different like your paper long? 8-day wake up and I thank God. Bad decision got you wishing you